"She's unstable. You can't trust her with clients," my ex-husband said, standing in the middle of my office like he had every right to be there. My boss folded his arms. 9 coworkers stared at me. I opened my mouth to speak. Then HR walked in, holding a thick file, and the entire room went quiet. "My name is Lauren Mitchell. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a project manager at a mid-sized marketing firm. Not flashy, not loud, just dependable, detail-oriented, and quietly good at my job. I went through a divorce last year that nearly broke me, not because I still loved him, but because of what came after. My family took his side. My confidence had already been worn down after years of being talked over, dismissed, and made to feel like I was always one wrong step from falling apart. I wasn't rich, I wasn't bold, but I had something no one saw coming. I just hadn't needed to use it yet." If you've ever been judged based on someone else's version of your story, hit subscribe. I know how it feels when people don't even ask for your side. Share your experience in the comments. I read every one. Let's go. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of morning where the office smells like stale coffee and printer paper, where people sit at their desks without really looking up. I was halfway through a client brief when I heard his voice in the hallway, Daniel's voice, my ex-husband. He walked in like he was there to help, calm face, concerned eyes, the kind of performance that used to fool me for years. My boss, Greg, was standing near the door when Daniel stopped him and started talking, quietly at first, then louder. "I'm just worried about her," Daniel said. "She hasn't been stable since the divorce. You should know what you're dealing with." Greg didn't ask him to stop. He didn't ask how Daniel had gotten past reception. He just stood there, arms crossed, listening. And because it was an open-plan office, everyone else listened too. "You don't know what she's like at home," Daniel continued. "She's emotional, unpredictable. She shouldn't be handling clients right now." I felt every eye in the room shift toward me. The whispers started almost immediately. I stood up. I tried to speak. Daniel talked over me, his voice measured, reasonable, almost kind-sounding. That was always his talent, making cruelty sound like concern. Greg looked at me with an expression I had never seen from him before. Doubt. Real, visible doubt. "Lauren, maybe we should schedule a review," he said, "just to make sure everything's under control." Before I could respond, the door opened again. It was Sandra from HR. She walked in holding a thick manila folder and looked around the room with the kind of expression that meant she already knew more than anyone in that space. Nobody said a word. The days after that were the loneliest I'd had since moving into my new apartment. Greg placed me under a temporary performance review without sitting down and actually hearing my side. Coworkers who used to wave good morning started avoiding eye contact. One colleague, a guy named Trevor who had always been friendly, quietly removed me from a project I had spent 3 weeks building from scratch. No explanation, just gone. Then came the emails. Daniel had started contacting company leadership directly. He framed it as concern, of course. He attached screenshots, carefully cropped, carefully chosen. He painted a picture of a woman who was fragile and unreliable, and because he was calm and articulate and presented himself as a worried former spouse, people read those emails and believed him. Greg started logging my behavior. Every minor thing, a delayed response, a slightly short reply. Things that would have passed unnoticed before were now being noted somewhere in a file I wasn't allowed to see. The worst moment came on a Thursday. I had spent 2 weeks preparing materials for a major client meeting, research, slides, a full strategy deck. That morning, I was told I wasn't needed in the room. "We didn't want to stress you out, Lauren," Priya said, not quite meeting my eyes. I nodded, I sat back down at my desk, and I did not cry, not there, not where anyone could see. But something shifted inside me that day. I stopped reacting, I started watching, and I started building something of my own. What they didn't know was that I had been documenting everything for months. It started during the marriage, actually. I had learned early that Daniel rewrote history the moment it was convenient, so I kept records, emails, screenshots, a private journal with dates and times. When I started at the firm, that habit stayed with me, not out of paranoia, but because I had learned the hard way that the truth needs receipts.
I had saved meeting recordings, internal messages where Trevor had lifted my ideas and presented them as his own, a chain of emails showing Greg had bypassed HR protocol more than once, and a growing thread of Daniel's workplace contacts that crossed the line from concern into something more deliberate, something more like harassment. I didn't raise my voice, I thought to myself one night, sitting at my kitchen table with the glow of my laptop, because I didn't need to. There was one person who helped me make sense of all of it. Her name was Vivian. She had been a senior manager at the firm years before I joined, and she had left to consult elsewhere. We had stayed in touch, more as a habit than anything deliberate, and when things started getting bad, I told her everything. She didn't react with outrage. She didn't tell me to quit or fight publicly. She just said, "Organize what you have, keep your tone clean, let the system do what it's supposed to do when it finally has the right information." She helped me sort through my documentation and present it clearly, the kind of clarity that could sit in front of a senior leadership team and not be dismissed. "Just wait," she told me one evening over the phone. "The truth doesn't rush, but it lands hard." HR scheduled a formal meeting. Leadership would be present. Everyone assumed it was the beginning of the end for me. I could feel it in the hallway, in the way people avoided sitting near me in the break room. Greg seemed almost relaxed. Daniel had been contacted as a witness. I walked into that room and sat down. My hands were still. My face was calm. The room was full. Greg sat across from me, flanked by two members of senior leadership. HR was represented by Sandra and her director, and at the far end of the table, Daniel sat with his hands folded, wearing the same calm expression he always wore when he was certain he had already won. Greg began speaking. He outlined his concerns. His voice had the careful weight of someone who believed he was being thorough. Daniel nodded along at the appropriate moments, adding detail where he could. Then Sandra opened the folder. "Before we proceed," she said, "we need to clarify what this 6-month report actually contains." The room stilled. Even Greg stopped talking. Sandra read clearly and without drama. The report documented Daniel's repeated, unsolicited contact with the workplace over a span of weeks, contact that met the threshold for harassment under company policy. It documented Greg's decision to allow an outsider into an internal professional setting without authorization. It included performance data, 6 months of it, showing that Lauren Mitchell had consistently met or exceeded every benchmark assigned to her. And it included a documented pattern of credit misattribution, with her work appearing in other people's presentations. "Miss Mitchell has exceeded expectations for 6 months, Sandra said, her voice flat and factual. Then she looked at the rest of the table. "The concern here is not her, it's how this situation was handled." Greg's face changed. He started to speak, then stopped. He tried again. The words didn't quite come together the way he needed them to. Daniel was asked to leave. He stood up slowly, that calm expression finally slipping just enough for me to notice. He walked out without looking at me. I didn't need him to. Greg's authority over my team was restructured within 2 weeks. Trevor was pulled into a separate HR conversation. I was offered a transfer to a senior project lead position in a department where my work would be properly credited. I took it. I don't talk to Daniel anymore. Not a message, not a response, nothing. That door is closed and sealed. Some of my coworkers came back around eventually, warmer, more careful. I kept my distance, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. I know now who shows up when things are uncertain, and that knowledge matters more than forgiveness. They tried to define me in one moment, but I built my truth over time, quietly, carefully, without asking anyone for permission. If someone ever tried to destroy your reputation or twist your story, you know how this feels. Share your experience in the comments. I want to hear it. Subscribe to stand with people who've been judged unfairly. Click hype to help this story reach others who need it. Did this story hit home? Let me know by liking the video and sharing your thoughts below. Your support makes a huge difference.